going to be fun. So the camera's live, so hold on, because I've got to do a couple things. Hello there, and welcome to the Dr. Elisa Show here on KUHS Denver the Stream. I hope you are comfy and listening somewhere where you can perhaps even close your eyes and take in this show. Today I have an amazing guest who I'll introduce in just a couple of moments. And I'm, as always, checking my technology and making sure I did everything right. So welcome, KUHS Denver the Stream, the Dr. Elisa Show. I have an amazing guest, and before that, let me remind you that the point of this show is to ignite a Renaissance spirit within you. And there are so many ways to define that, and so many ways for you to embrace your true soul's journey. And number 2.
Top and bottom. Top and bottom.
Not 3?
And go down. Not 3. You're not on 3.
And yeah?
You're not on 3.
Oh, I'm not on 3. Okay, I'm messing with technology. That, hopefully I got straight. I think I got it now. So, hopefully you can hear me. Hopefully I got this right now. So, yeah, what's the show about? Igniting a Renaissance of spirit within you. The work I do with people is helping them find their soul's craving and to embrace it and live it. And the show just offers you insights, little pieces of the way other people have inspired me, ignited something in me, and then I hope they do the same for you. I am live here. I'm also live on Facebook, The Dr. Elisa Show. You can also watch on Twitter. I want to do a couple shout outs. To begin with, I want to do a shout out for the MS Society. I am fundraising for them. They're an amazing organization, and you probably know somebody with MS, and you just don't know that you know them. I will be in 2 weeks doing a show on philanthropy and MS, so think about tuning in for that one also. Also a shout out for Connect for Health Colorado. They are offering more savings to more people than ever before on health insurance with plans at low or no cost. You can call them at 855-752-6749. I want to shout out for them that it's a good place, a good resource. Okay, and the thing I always tell you, I want us by the end of the year to all be philanthropists, and you could donate $1 a week and change the course of somebody's life, of an organization. It may not sound like much money, but it is. Okay, I want to get on with my guest. Before I do that, I'm going to introduce her a little bit differently. To begin with, you know that I bring, like I said, people who inspire me. And this is a woman who is a bit edgy and a bit romantic. So let me start this introduction by reading you one of her poems. I don't want small talk or a soul who sits at the surface. Take me to the middle of a novel full of dark romance and night gardens scented in Dracula orchids. Let's talk about how we knew each other under full moons of another life and secrets of Salem. Let your soul out to dance with mine. If you haven't heard of this woman before, you're about to. She's about to publish a book of poetry. This is Anne-Marie Eliezer. And as you can see, she writes darkly romantic, edgy, gothic poetry that speaks to women and maybe men who are a little more impressed with Morticia Addams than Cinderella, know that they have a beautiful inner darkness and have a secret love for Edgar Allan Poe. Anne-Marie, welcome to the show.
Hi there, Alyssa. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you today. So here's what I want from you, is I kind of want your story. You found this life inspiration, right? I talk about igniting a renaissance of spirit by writing this hauntingly romantic poetry, and your work ignites something in me. So I'm wondering, could you share your journey from, because whatever, from no, I don't write poetry to oh my gosh poetry?
Well, well, I started. It all began in 2015. I've always had a love of words and books and poetry, and I started She's Magic and Midnight Lace on Facebook. And it was really an effort at that time. It was just something for me, a little escape to share beautiful words and to share art. And I really became inspired, not only by modern day poets, but poets of the past. And as time went on, I found myself looking and searching for more in these poems. And I thought, well, if I can't find it, then I'm going to create it. So in 2017, I just started writing. And once I did, it didn't stop. The words just kept coming. and you know, through an amazing writing community and with a lot of support, an amazing follower base, I was able to grow my page and really get my writing out there on a number of social media platforms. And I just absolutely love it. It's such a passion of mine that I really, honestly, never knew I had until I started writing.
So this is what fascinates me about some of your poetry is it is a mixture of fairy tale and passion, and almost as if you know, the Grimm's fairy tale isn't Disney's fairy tale, right? They're all a little dark, and you seem to blend that with an intimate kind of passion. I want to read another one, if that's okay.
Sure, yes.
Her tea parties are brimming with Mad Hatters, misfits, and mayhem. Give me a little whiskey and lunacy, darling, and I'll show you the way to Wonderland. Where does that, so I guess, I mean, this is an amazing poem for someone who adores Alice in Wonderland and that dark part, and you said you didn't realize you had this till you started writing. What have you learned about yourself with this writing? Like, where does this live in you? And I don't know, is that a clear question? Does that make sense?
It is. Yes. This lives deep within me. I can just it's deep within my soul. And I've always had a love of fairy tales. I have since I was a child, and still at this time in my life, I'm still drawn to that childlike wonder of fairy tales. But as a child, I was fascinated with the Wicked Witch. I was fascinated with Maleficent, and I had no desire to be the princess.
Right.
And so this just comes from a very deep place, very personal place.
So it's fascinating because I grew up knowing that no mermaid would actually have given up her voice to be with the prince and nicely let him marry someone else. I mean, like, the Disney fairy tales were not exactly how these things went. And wondering why women always had to get rescued, right? So there was always that within me too, right? Something similar. But I'm wondering if you find that more people, women particularly, are inspired by, have they told you that you're awakening something in them?
They have. I've gotten some amazing feedback, amazing comments from from my followers. And, you know, I just had a recent one that brought me to tears. It was probably the most touching response to my writing I've ever received.
So share it.
So her soulmate used to share my writings with her. It was a very intimate thing between them.
Wow.
And he since has passed on. And yet she still finds comfort in my words because they remind her of him. And that was so touching because I never realized how my writing affects people until they let me know. And I've been followers have reached out to me, mm-hmm. telling me that my writing has gotten them through a death in the family, or just, your writing is amazing, it touches me, it speaks to me. Mm-hmm. And no amount of, I think especially in the social media world, we all strive for the likes and the number of followers we have, but that doesn't compare to the personal responses that I get, and to how how my writing affects people.
I can relate in that. One of the things I love about your poetry is that the woman is always in a position of strength.
Yes.
And it's darkly romantic, and so I think it speaks to so many women, and probably men, and probably people who are non-binary. I mean, lots and lots of people, of ways of finding their own inner sensuality, inner, not just, yes, because it's more sensual than sexual. And I'm wondering, is that the response you get from people? Is that how you view your poetry?
Well, I do, and it's that sensuality and my darkness that comes through from a place of deep within, that I think for so long, not just women, mm-hmm. but for so long, we've been taught, or many of us have been taught, that you don't talk about your darknesses or your sensuality, that you somehow have to keep that hidden. I mean, and I will go right back to the example of the fairy tale. It was always very good. It was always so good. And that the dark queens and the wicked witches, I mean, yes, in those tales that they portrayed, were evil and did wrong. However, mm-hmm. In the later versions, you understood where Maleficent was coming from. Mm-hmm. You understood where Cruella de Vil was coming from in this latest movie. You understand that, just for so long, I think we've been taught to hide those things, to bury those things, and I don't think we should.
It's fascinating to me. I want to just follow that line a little bit. The musical Wicked does the same thing, right? It gives you this other point of view. And one of the reasons I think it's important, I'm reading a book that doesn't sound related. It's called The Coddling of the American Mind. But they talk in there about how Americans specifically, but lots of other people, have turned the world into us versus them, good versus evil. And we see that theme over and over and over. And yet, sometimes what we see as evil is simply somebody else's perspective. Obviously, there's evil in the world. I mean, obviously, there is true evil. But sometimes we're so wrapped up in our perspective that we don't understand the other perspective. And I think your poetry gives us a place to go with that, right? Like it's okay for me to say that I'm an incredibly sensual woman, and I don't want to hide that, right? So has it given you permission to your poetry to show up differently in the world?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that?
It absolutely has.
Okay.
My poetry in getting these words out has helped me in my personal life immensely. It's given me a voice in situations that I needed to have a voice. It's gotten me out of situations that I needed to get out of, and it's brought me strength. And that was because it simmered in a place of darkness. I was going through a very difficult time in my personal life when I started writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was those circumstances and the darkness within my own that pulled me out of that and pushed me forward. And like I said, once I started writing and the words came out, they didn't stop. I knew at that moment that I had this just buried inside me, and it was going to come out, and I was going to let it out. And so, yes, it definitely has. My writing has changed me in many ways, for the positive, for the good.
So would you say, if I I just want to dig in a little more there, that writing this has helped you speak up in your career perhaps, or changed who you are in relationships?
It's changed who I am in relationships.
Uh-huh.
It's freed me from so many things. It's also helped me deal with things that I was dealing with most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some traumas, or how I approached relationships without getting into detail, with certain family members, or what I went through, or what I'm still going through. Just giving me that voice, its power, its strength. And now that I have it, and now that it's out there,
it's not going away.
I mean, it's not going away.
Okay, I want to read another poem, all right? And then I'd love it if you read one. Like, find one of your favorites. I'm going to read this one, and then I want to hear what it sounds like when you read it, okay?
Okay.
Women are magical creatures, with kisses bearing both stars and storms, and voices colorful enough to put crying babies to sleep while scaring grown men to death.
Yes.
I think that's so true, right?
Yes, we're amazing. We are amazing creatures.
Mm-hmm.
We are maternal. We give birth. We step up in so many areas, and most times we're expected to. But yes, absolutely, we carry the same voice to soothe our babies as we do to scare grown men.
So if you just tuned in, this is the Dr. Lisa Show on KUHS Denver, the stream. And oh my gosh, I'm so glad you joined us. I am talking with Anne-Marie Eliezer, the author of an up-and-coming book, right, that is also called Magic and Midnight Lace. And it is go ahead.
It's an upcoming book. Yeah, it's going to be called She's Magic and Midnight Lace.
Okay.
It's going to be released in early November. Mm-hmm. It's going to be published by a very good friend of mine, Jade Long, and 300 South Media Group, mm-hmm. South Media Publishing. And yes, I'm so excited.
This is, and your so again, if you're joining us, she's this amazing poet. Do you have a favorite poem? I'd love to hear you read one or two of your poems. How they sound like coming from you.
Okay, so this poem right here, well, I'm going to read it.
Okay.
It's titled Maleficent Girls. Okay. This is one of the very first poems I ever wrote. And it's Maleficent Girls. And it's the ones born with fairy blood, who dance with their darkness and roam quiet places, conversing with crows and clouds. And this poem is probably single-handedly been shared the most and gotten the most response out of any other poem I've ever written.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think that young ladies, women identify with the fact that there are those of us who dance with our darkness. And we like to roam those quiet places, conversing with things such as the crows and the clouds.
So here's one of the things I love, and I wonder if this has is something you've thought about. So much of, and I'm not criticizing anything here, but so much of sort of spiritual advice and spiritual language around women, which is beautiful, is, you know, you're full of light and you're full of love and you're full of, and it's a very light energy.
Right.
And it's lovely and beautiful, and thank you people who spread that and share that and teach that. And then there's like Morticia Adams in here, and then there's the there's that other side, and I wonder if you see yourself as the darkness that shares the light in a dance with the light. Like, I don't have a clear question, but have you thought about that?
I have. And you know, I'm a very spiritual person, but I believe, but I'm fascinated with the dark side, and I don't believe that the darker things are always the bad things, as we've been led to believe. You know, and when I talk about dark clouds and rainy days and ravens and crows, those sort of things have always just brought me comfort, and I don't think that those are a bad thing. Not at all.
So it's fascinating, because the book that I'm trying to get out, hopefully, it's probably September by the time it comes out, is about women who become the dark, and they are, and it explores the dark as a way that the light can shine, and that without, I mean, we don't see stars during the day because the sky is bright, but they're there.
Right.
The stars are there. It has, the darker it is, the more stars you see. So there is a dance between dark and light, and so much of the way fairy tales have been written, and women have often portrayed themselves, right, and been portrayed, is just with the light. And sometimes for some of us, our strength is in the dark. Now, if you're listening to this and you just have to say something, I can tell you that you can go to the Dr. Elisa Show on Facebook. I have the page up. We're streaming live, and you can chat. You can put a comment in there. So is there another poem? Can you read another poem for us?
Yes. Let me, let's see. Okay, so here's one. Okay. A lot of my poems, sometimes you'll see, is like part this, part that, sometimes this, sometimes that. Okay. You know, split down the middle. Mm-hmm. So my antique teacup is but half full of Pandora's curses and nestling madness. Part weeping willow, part wicked witch. My soul settled upon a dark, enchanting castle above the cold sea, while my heart tugs for seeping, howling things.
So it's a dance. Your poetry is about a dance, right?
Because sometimes I am the weeping willow. I'm just, you know, I'm the soft weeping willow. And sometimes I can be the wicked witch. And I don't think that there's anything. And when I say wicked witch, that means I'm not talking in literal terms of a wicked witch. I think people understand that those maybe harsher days, or, you know, when we're going through something, and sometimes those feelings we feel like we have to repress and put them down and put them away because society doesn't want to hear that, or women, we shouldn't be acting that way. And no, absolutely not. I think that we have to just embrace every part of us. I think the more that we embrace those parts of us, the more we shine.
So it is in that dance of darkness and lightness, right?
Yeah.
That we shine. You've clearly moved people. I wonder, now that you found this voice, I'm wondering, like a message, like what do you want women to know? I mean, clearly, and men, and everybody on the spectrum, right? But you found your voice not by journaling, though it's a kind of journaling, not by standing up and stamping your feet, not by, forcing yourself into something. Many of us have struggled to find our voice. This is a fascinating way to find your voice, to write your inner darkness in poetry. And do you have some advice for women who are struggling to find their voice?
When I started writing, it was from a very personal, deep, quiet place. From my heart, my soul, my intuition. And that's all, I know it sounds cliche, but that's where it needs to come from. Mm-hmm. If you sit with yourself, and like I said, when I started this, I was going through a lot, and I just sat with myself and listened to myself. What did I need? What did I want? And that's when the answer came to me and the words came to me. You just have to listen. You have to listen to what's inside of you, not what anybody else has to say, but what's inside of you. Because I had not, these are from people who should have been supporting me, or I should say, one person who should have been supporting me the most, mm-hmm. who turned my writing into something very ugly and said it was dark and demonic. And I didn't listen because I knew where that person was coming from. I knew, I listened to myself. I didn't listen to the criticism, and all from my heart and soul and my intuition. And nothing is impossible. And my greatest joy in this is that my children, mm-hmm. and my son follows me on Instagram, and my daughter keeps up with me, my daughter's boyfriend it's just amazing. My children, my stepchildren, it's amazing, the support and the love that I get from them. And they're watching me bring a dream come true to life. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is just one of the most, it's just an amazing thing for me, for them to be witnessing this. But yes, and like I said, I never knew I had this in me. Mm-hmm. And all of these years later, through everything I went through, here it is. And if you have it inside of you, let it out. Let it out. You can do it. If you have a passion, if you've always wanted to do something, start to do it. And it's not going to happen overnight. For me, this is almost 4 years in the making. Mm-hmm. This is daily sharing of my work and getting myself out there. And, some days feeling like, oh, what am I doing? Is anybody even out there listening? But I kept my best foot forward, and I kept at it, and I just let that fire go, and here it is. So yes, do it. Let it out.
Let it out. What I love about this message is it is giving everybody permission to say, here's
yes.
what I crave, and it may not fit in with what society or my tribe or my culture wants me to do, but it's who I am. And exactly. That there are so many facets to who we are, like a diamond, right? It has all those different edges to it. And that you get to be more than one. And I wonder, and I'm wondering if you've heard this from some of your fans, is that when we deny the darkness inside of us, I think we find we are angrier. We face depression.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you've also had feedback like that this has helped other people go into their own, inner power. And again, when we say darkness, we're not talking evil. We're just talking to that unexplored place within us, excuse me.
Right. Yes, I have. I've received responses how it's just helped them so much. You know, and you're right. It's not an evil darkness. We all have darknesses in us. And sometimes if we don't deal with them, it comes out in other ways.
And I have to say, some of what you write is, like, I just want to say it to somebody on the street sometimes. One of them is, I'm not just the dark poem, darling. I'm the whole haunted bookshop.
Right.
I want to use that as a one-liner somewhere, and I don't know where, but you know, that may come out of my mouth at some point. There's no telling. And there's something about your writing, and I think it might even be how short it is. Another one that I love. He's the wildfire to my wildflower, the inhale to my exhale, the confession to my sin. And when you find the beast who unleashes your flame, your soul will welcome home its twin. Did this change who you are, like in love relationships, or what you were looking for in a relationship?
It has.
Okay. In powerful, positive ways, I'm assuming.
In a very powerful, positive way.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The woman I was is not the woman that I am any longer, and that is a really good thing for me. It's a new awakening for me, and that's what my writing did for me.
So
once I let it all out, I learned more about myself in these last 4 years of putting pen to paper and letting it all out. Now I truly understand when people say, write it, put it in a journal, get your thoughts on paper, get those inner thoughts out, because I learned so much more about myself in these 4 years than I've known in my entire life. And yet I always knew there was something in me that I was meant to do. I knew that. And I believe right here and right now, this is it. This is what I was meant to do.
So it's fascinating, because what you're talking about is finding your soul's craving and following it, embracing it and following it. You're talking about the power of finding our voice. And what I love about this is all those things are true, but you do it in such a unique way. Instead of following a journaling path, or here's what I'm thinking today, or here's what I'm worried about, it emerges from you in myth and metaphor. And you talk about it just emerging from you. So are you able to like sit down and today I'm going to write from 10 to 2, or like how does this happen?
No specific time. I just kind of feel it. I feel it kind of stirs within me, and I'm like, it's time to write. It's time to sit down. And if I go a couple of days without doing it, that voice inside tells me it's time to sit down and do it. It needs to, now that it's come out and been unleashed, I need to do it.
So it's almost like this this inner powerful voice that says, I know who you truly are, and I know what you truly want and what you're good at, and I'm going to help you do that. So I know we talk about this as sort of like the darkness of it, but the beauty of you finding your voice and being able to use that is amazing. And
I'm not this in real life. I'm like in real life, I'm not a social person. I love my solitude. I don't do well with small talk and all, I'm very shy by nature. To be in front of people is difficult for me. Yet when I sit down and it's just me and my words, it all comes out. I don't know if I could sit comfortably in front of a room of people and talk so openly as I do in my writing.
Well, you're doing great right now, talking about yourself and being open about it. And of course, radio's a little bit different, right? And if you've just joined me, this is the Dr. Lisa Show here on KUHS Denver, the stream. You can find us at KUHS.com, or you can tune into the Dr. Lisa Show on Facebook Live and comment. I know that she has a following, Anne Marie has a following. If you are one of her fans, jump on Facebook, the Dr. Lisa Show, and share your thoughts on this. Because where I want to go, and I'm very conscious of time. Do you have a few more minutes to share?
I do.
Okay. So many of us, let me see if I can frame this without talking too much. Many of us as women, and I know men did too, but especially women, grew up being hushed. Be nice.
Oh, yeah.
Be quiet. Be ladylike. Don't be like that. I mean, just don't be so passionate. Don't be so enthusiastic. I was told not to laugh so hard, that I moved my mouth too much when I talked. I mean, all these things that I was told.
Mm-hmm.
Quiet, quiet, quiet. I'm wondering if what I have found with women is when we discover our voice, we can stop yelling, right? Because sometimes when you're hushed, you end up yelling, and yelling is completely ineffective in most situations. This is like you've learned to whisper powerfully, and I'm wondering if you can talk about if that makes sense to you, and if you find that you're helping other women do that, like have that powerful, quiet whisper that can scare grown men.
Yes. So I did grow up that way. Mm-hmm. I don't want to upset anyone who may be listening or offend anybody,
okay.
But yes, I grew up in a time where, it was back 70s and 80s, mm-hmm. and strict no-nonsense adults in my life who, you were to be seen but not heard. You're going to act a certain way. You're not going to cry. You're not going to have this emotional outburst. We're just not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I learned to deal with that in other ways that just were not healthy. But at the same time, as a child, I spent a great deal of time, it was summertime, go out, go play. I was in the woods all the time. I had imaginary friends, and I was always out in the woods creating my own little worlds. And of course, it was, I got made fun of for that, and what are you doing, and who are you talking to, and, so yes, I, for a long time, felt like I didn't have a voice in a lot of areas. Mm-hmm. And then as I grew up, I tried to find ways to deal with that, which wasn't always the best way in dealing with that. And at the same time, I was surrounding myself with people, including intimate partners, who felt that they could be my voice, or they were going to be my voice, and this is how we're going to do things. Mm-hmm. And finally, I just said, no, this is not how my story is going to end. And that also changed when I had children and became a mother, and looking at what I wanted for them and how I wanted that to be different, especially for my own daughter. And so, yes, and you're right, it did. Having to silence myself when I felt pushed into a corner or in a situation where that I needed to get out of. Yeah, I felt like I needed to yell, which was completely ineffective, or be angry. It was all of those things that I had pushed down, my voice that had been pushed down. You know, I wrote a poem about that. I wish I had it, and I don't. It's about what happens to girls who, or to women, when you try to silence their voice or their thoughts. Eventually, when they come out, you better be careful, because they're going to come out. And it, you know, I put it, you know, I compared it to, you know, the sea witches and the sirens, you know, that yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so much, like, even some of your short ones. Beware the girl with onyx eyes and sapphire skies, for she has the spirit of a raven and a fairy godmother keeping watch over both of them. And so, over and over again, what I find is that you, through myth, through metaphor, through this eloquent use of language, are inspiring women to find that voice, and it's soft. You're not yelling in any of these, and there's definitely poetry that yells at us, right? That tells us how bad things are and what we have to do to change it. And yours is much more go into yourself and see who's there. And it might be Cinderella, it might be pearls and white tablecloths and lace. It might be.
Absolutely.
This isn't right. It's just that your message is go into yourself, right?
Absolutely. Go into yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and you found this. I want to read one more. Her angels came with sweeping wings, steeped in shades of black, with dusky, lacy corset gowns flowing from their backs. You remind me a little of the poetry we see in Alice in Wonderland, right? It turns your head. So I know we're short on time. Do you have another poem, one more you'd like to read for us? One of your favorites?
I'm going to read this one. This is probably, I want to say, maybe the first poem I ever wrote or ever posted out on social media.
Wow, okay.
And some little girls have vintage souls where black butterflies dance and wild orchids grow. And I think that those little girls shouldn't be silenced, shouldn't be hushed. I think that they should be able to dance with those wild orchids and with their black butterflies, and have a voice.
So tell everybody how to find you. And Will, thank you for posting on Facebook. I'm glad you're enjoying this conversation. And he's saying congratulations to you. How do people, I mean, I found you on Facebook, but how do people find you and read your poetry? And tell us about that and where we're going to find your book.
So I'm on pretty much every social media outlet. I am on Facebook, I am on Instagram, I am on Pinterest, and I am on Twitter. Okay. You can Google me, find my work, and like I said, the book will be released, my first book, because I do already have a second book brewing, but let's get through the first book first.
Absolutely.
Will be released in early November, and that should be available. I don't know too many details yet. It will be out on Amazon, and there will be paperback versions, I believe, and
maybe Kindle.
And other versions. But there will be, yes, there will be absolutely more details, and I will be, me and Jay and 300 South Media Group will be pumping all of that out. So,
and you're more than welcome to come back on, and even if it's just for like a short bit, to say it's launched and I'm going to read you 5 or 6 poems. So you're.
I would love that.
Yeah, I think that
You've
would be
been
lovely.
wonderful. You've just been amazing.
Oh, this
Thank
is so fun, and I didn't realize. I mean, I knew I'd read your poetry, but I didn't realize we had that connection about the importance of the dark, and that the dark isn't evil. That the dark
Yeah.
is what shows off, right? Again, you can only see the stars in the dark of the night, and the darker it is, the more they shine. So,
Yes.
Anne Marie, so I know you have to go. Thank you so much for being with
Thank you so
me,
much,
and
Melissa.
we will chat soon. I think we're going to be BFFs from this point on.
Yes, I think so.
Okay, all right. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. So, if you've just tuned in, you have been listening to the Dr. Elisa Show on KUHS Denver, the stream, and that was Anne Marie Eliezer. Her book is coming out. She is Magic and Midnight Lace, and we've read several of her poems. And here's where I've got about 10 minutes left to talk to you, and maybe 9, and I want to just talk about, take this time to kind of do a wrap of what I feel she is doing and saying, and what I heard from her, and what I'm hoping you got, and the message. As you know, what I work with people on is living on the loose. And life on the loose to me is about